right. Hey, this is Anthony Grigsby, World Events Insurance, worldeventsga.com, representing San Joaquin Black Liz, and it's Feature Friday. So I have a great guest today. So we have Rachel Thompson. Rachel does an array of things. If you think about somebody that has their hands in 5, 10 different projects, because number one, they're that busy. Two, they're that focused. They're that giving back to the community. This is that person, Rachel Thompson. So we're here today. She owns Ray and Jay's Mobile Bar, but she also, I didn't know this until recently, she's also a counselor for the People's Empowerment Center. And so we're here today to talk about that. Okay. So Rachel, first of all, thank you for agreeing to talk to me. I know you're a busy woman. I know you got a lot of things going on, but I'm so interested in learning, and the people want to know about the People's Empowerment Center and what you guys have to offer our community.
Definitely. Thank you for having us, Anthony. And as you know, we heal in the way we need to heal. The People's Empowerment Center was established in 2018. We are the Social Change Center of the Church of Truth Incorporated, which is our 501c3. And the Church of Truth Incorporated, as I sit as a board member, CFO, on the board, we were looking to establish ourselves more and greater in San Joaquin County community. We've done things from feeding our displaced individuals that needed connectedness to services. And so they approached me, the board did, and they said, hey, we want to do some things greater. And so this was right before the pandemic hit. And we actually launched in the pandemic. It was very difficult, but it was one of those things that we saw that many people needed the connected to services, and they needed the representation because Black therapists matter, right? And so we're very intentional here as being the executive director that I hire Black and Brown clinicians that are supportive in our cultural and indigenous ways of healing.
Okay, so I'm glad that we're here touching base on that, because being a Black male, we also have the stigma that we don't want or nor do we need counseling.
Yes.
Okay. Now we've all gone through trauma. We go through daily trauma.
Yes.
Daily trauma. There's a war against us on a daily basis that many of you guys don't realize is being waged against you.
Yes.
And so we go through trauma every day, and we don't always seek the ways in which to release, the stress or talk about, the things that we're going through. So touch base on that. How do you guys address those issues, for those in the community?
Thank you, Anthony, for stating that, right? That segue is awesome because we don't talk about it. And Anthony, being a strong Black man that he is, really shows how, to model for our young Black man on how they can pursue healing. But I have that conversation a lot in places that I sit, in places that I go to consult with individuals that want to know how can we heal the Black community. And that is going back to our roots, but it's also understanding the historical trauma that often plagues our community. We carry the trauma within our DNA coding. A lot of people don't know about that, but there is genetic and there is evidence-based research that states about the cortisol levels, the levels of trauma, and the coding and the language and even the information that's passed down through the bloodline. So just imagine African Americans being stolen from their lands, being taken, their language, and being divided, right? That's a lot of trauma in itself, right? One of our professors and one of our teachers, Miss Grace DeJoy, she talks about that in post-slavery syndrome, about the post-traumatic stress syndrome of being adjacent to slaves, right? Being connected to slaves. We bring that into our clinical settings and we understand that, but we also deal with the modern trauma, our homicides, right? Of the displacement of Black people, the disproportionate amounts of Black people in the prison system, right? And then we often seen in this pandemic how a lot of us died. And so just because these things are happening, I think there is more of a push in the atmosphere for people like me to have that lens. And so I am a trauma specialist here in San Joaquin. I do sit with Reinvent South Stockton Coalition for the trauma initiative that's being launched right now, where we're going out and we're showing the cultural competency of trauma intervention and why that's important.
You know, so we talk about trauma, and trauma can appear in many different forms. Now, you know, we also have to respect that we are programmed and we are bombarded with daily programming.
Yes, we are.
You know, as to how we look at ourselves, how we view each other, you know, how we respond to each other, how we respond to certain stimuli, you know, and it takes, you know, you utilizing tools that you offer, I'm sure, to be able to even recognize the programming
Yes.
that you're faced with on a daily basis.
Yes.
So what are some things that you guys, you know, may present to allow someone to see and identify that they're actually being programmed?
Thank you very much for even talking about that part. So we deal a lot with intentional focus on the self, right? It's very important that we acknowledge where we are going and where we have been, right? And so we do that in Healing Circle. And so I am certified as a facilitator through the National Compadres Network to hold circle. And I've also been adopted by our elders to be taught the Lakota way of how we self-fulfill the self and how we sit and understand what the self needs. But also, evidence-based practice tells us with cognitive behavior therapy, it's actually pressing down those negative thoughts and being able to push and go towards positive behavior to change how we actually excel and how we go about things. So a lot of us, we always talked about Black folks being on CP time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's an actual dysregulation, right? It's a dysregulation of stress and trauma, being late all the time, to be honest with you, not being on time. These things are given to us in therapy, and I actually sit down with my clients. We normalize a lot of things. This is why having a cultural lens, having a trauma-informed lens is very important when you're seeking out a therapist. So when you're seeking out a therapist, just know exactly what you're needing and why.
Okay. All right, so we're back here, but let me just say, that's how important, you know, Rachel's services are. She had one phone turned off, but clients just had to get a hold of her, so they went to the backup phone to get a hold of her because they just needed to talk to her right now. All right, but that's how you know, sometimes, you know, people just need to a sounding board,
Yeah.
you know, to get through the day.
Yeah.
But we were talking about, you know, trauma-based and programming and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's finish up on that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we talked about, you know, how we're dealing with daily programming,
Yes.
and we talked about some tools in which to utilize and address those.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll say this, as from my personal experience, it took me a while to realize, you know, the program that I had gone through as a child,
Okay.
and through my adolescence and even into my adulthood. But when I finally recognized the programming and the tools that are used to program us, I could see on a daily basis where they're trying to hit me on every day.
Okay.
You know, and so one of the things that I utilize in my own household is, one, I don't let my family talk to my kids about getting a job.
Oh.
Okay, they can't use the word job to my kids.
Interesting.
It's outlawed in my family.
Okay.
They can only ask them what kind of profession or what kind of business they're going to go into.
I do the same thing.
Okay. Oh, good. Thank you. And the other thing is, you have to watch what your kids watch.
Mm-hmm.
Pay attention to what your kids watch on TV.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not watching programs that emphasize characters that look like them,
Right.
then how are they going to identify
Correct.
positively with characters on TV. So
love
touch
that.
base on that, on how you address that with some of your clients.
I am super intentional. As you can see, I am gonna leave the screen right now just to come back. I'm very intentional on what I buy for the counseling office. As you can see, I buy beautiful black dolls for the children to play with. I'm very intentional on the books of color that I keep in counseling because I know the program starts really early. And as you know, if you don't know, there was a study that was in the 1950s and was later duplicated of the black baby. And the black baby study really showed the programming that our children really see, the unconscious programming that they talk about, the prejudice and the racism that happens when they see themselves. And so as a black therapist, I'm very intentional on even how we talk about that deconstruction of colonization in therapy. It's very important. And our counterparts understand it. They understand that it's healthy to talk about that. Our children struggle with that. I also talk about the worth of the self. And when we do go to work for someone, right, or we acquire a job, and like Anthony says, deconstructing how we're supposed to go about success. Being an entrepreneur, my family reared entrepreneurs. They told us exactly the same thing. You either wanted to go to university or you wanted to start your business. I did both, and I was very traditional in my approach. I know now that I could have probably went straight into business and been just as successful. But having that foundation when you talk to your children and understanding where you come from is big, right? Understanding that you need to talk about the things that have happened in your family and be gentle with yourself. Understanding when you get into relationships, finding the person that will help you be balanced. But also knowing that you're pursuing your healing also. We don't talk about that. In the Black Family Unit, we talk about all of the things that we traditionally should be doing, but we don't talk about healing and therapeutic healing. Going forth and understanding that you might need to venture out of the city and get out of the urban vibe and expose your children to the arts and expose your children to different streams of understanding of how the world works. And that helps with their healing also.
I love some of the topics that you've touched base on, self-worth, because if you don't have self-worth, if you don't feel you're worthy, how can you expect someone, and how can you project that to someone else to get that, respect level that you deserve?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's hard, and it reciprocates this trauma that we talk about. How do we end the trauma? If the world around us expects a certain way for us to establish ourselves in the world, how do we change that narrative? I'm very intentional on that. Very intentional on educating. When I'm providing therapy, I'm providing a psychoeducation, understanding where you come from. You were not just a slave. They took the best of the best. They took the scientists, they took the herbalists, they took the pharmacists, the alchemists, they took the architect. And so if you don't know your history, know your history. You come from greatness, being of a black plight. We were a diaspora around the world, and we supported the world in a lot of different things, economically, financially, and the literature. So a lot of our history was whited out. And so I do talk to our clients that come into the People's Empowerment Center. I centered that name, the People's Empowerment Center, because I wanted it to be a beacon of the narrative that we're changing, especially here in San Joaquin.
Great. So we're going to close it out, but I want to just recap real quick and just re-emphasize, what Rachel just said on do your research, do your homework, know who you are, know who we are, know who we were. When she talks about, they took the best of the best and we were the best of the best, understand, look up, the Moors controlling Southern Europe from 300s to 1492. I mean, there's a lot that you can learn about who we are.
We brought soap.
You know, we brought
We brought
a lot
soap
of
and
soap.
bathing.
Hey,
We bought astronomical, numbers in which we charted the skies, and we were some of the first persons that actually mapped out some of the voyages we went on. And so those things have been whited out by European colonization. And understanding who you are allows you to rise up to the expectation of the Black person. And I hope I can be very clear without offending some of our counterparts. And if you're offended, check that too.
Well, hey, so real quick, I love that. So real quick, how can they get a hold of the People's Empowerment Center?
Thank you very much, Anthony, for coming today and interviewing us. The People's Empowerment Center, you can locate us on our website at www.thepeoplesempowermentctr.org or email us at rthompson@thepeoplesempowermentctr.org. Our telephone number here is 209-718-9828. We are open to new members and clients. We are also establishing enrollment for our healing circles. We do have healing circles for our men, our women, and our youth. We are establishing ourselves greater in today's society, and we're not afraid to have those courageous conversations. Follow me on the Prune Tree podcast. I talk a lot about the plight of the Black person and how we can heal ourselves along with our cultural indigenous teachings. And if you're wanting to look into the work that we've done over the years, visit Against All Odds podcast. I had that former podcast with my former host, Art Collins, and there's a lot of in-depth interviews with Rebel Ray on there. That's my alias. And I am a good rebel, and I'm good trouble, like our good senator says, and rest his soul. But I will tell you that this has been my calling for many, many years. I've been in the mental health field now for over 15 years. And I got my degree as a master's in social work. And so I look at the entire person and supporting the entire family unit. So thank you. I wish you well. And thank you for coming today.
Excellent. So we'll have all that information in the link below, so you can click on anything to reach her in many different formats. Sign up for the program. Come get your healing. It's much needed. Like and subscribe so you guys know what videos we have coming out. And as you know me, and as I always say, shop Black Stockton. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Man, that was
Thank
great.
you.